Good afternoon, Tutor John, and I'm answering a question from Nadine about how many hours it takes to make 280 cookies. Now, Nadine, the first thing is I don't have a lot of information to go on. Your question doesn't give us anything else, but I assume you're being asked to set up a ratio or proportion. And so I've done that, but I've kind of set it up a little bit different in that I've said, oh, we have two recipes. Let's see which one is the most efficient. So recipe number 1 makes 35 cookies and requires 1 hour to bake. Recipe number 2 makes 20 cookies, so a few less cookies, but requires less time to cook. Oh, you got to figure out, right, what's the best one. So I just set up a simple ratio. 35 cookies in 1 hour, 35 cookies in 1 hour is equal to 280 cookies in how many hours? Or in the case of recipe number 2, 20 cookies in 45 minutes, 20 cookies in 45 minutes is comparable to 280 cookies in how many minutes, right? So let's see, the first step we have is we're just going to cross multiply, and we know that 1 times 280, so 1 times 280 has to be equal to 35 times h, 35h. If that's the case, then 1 times 280, right? We want to isolate the h, so we're simply going to divide both sides by 35. And when we do that, what happens is 35 divided by 35 is 1. 1 times h is just h. 1 times 280 is 280. And 280 divided by 35 is 8. So we know our first recipe is going to take 8 hours, assuming there's no time for mixing and all that stuff, just cooking time, right? Because the question is, how much time does it take to bake? So recipe number 2, we're going to do the exact same thing. So the first thing we do is 45, cross multiply to get 45 times 280, right? And remember that if these two fractions are equivalent, or two ratios are equivalent, either way you want to look at it, then we should be able to cross multiply and set them equal to each other. 20 m for minutes, right? So if we think about that, 45 times 280, I did that a minute ago, that is 12,600 is equal to 20 m. And so I want to divide both sides by 20 so I can find just m by itself. So divide that side by 20. And what I get is 630. So 630 equals the number of minutes. But the problem is I want to compare it over here. I want to compare apples and apples. So I've got to do one step further, and that is I've got to take the 630 minutes and divide it by 60 because there are 60 minutes in an hour. And what I find is the second recipe requires 10.5 hours. So clearly, the first recipe is the winner, saves us a considerable amount of time. I hope this helps solve your proportion problem. And if your problem wasn't a proportion problem, if you'll let me know more information, I'd be glad to give you a better example. Thanks much. This is Tutor John, wishing you the best. Bye-bye.